Welcome back to Detailed, an original podcast by RCAT. This is a show where we uncover lessons learned to help you navigate your next project. I'm Cherise Lakeside, Senior Spec Writer at RDH Building Science, and your host. My guest today is Stefan Behnisch, founder of Behnisch Architekten, with offices in Stuttgart, Boston, Munich, and Weimar. Stefan Behnisch, born in 1957 in Stuttgart, studied philosophy, economics, and architecture. He is the founding partner of Behnisch Architekten in Germany. He is a world-renowned advocate and educator of sustainable building design and has lectured at conferences all over the world. I know this because I've actually met him. Behnisch's goal, to connect the forces of human life and the natural environment, fuels the design of every commission his firm receives. Since founding Behnisch & Partner in 1989, now Behnisch Architekten, Stefan has directed the design of dynamic, award-winning buildings that promote sustainability within the built environment. With a design portfolio that includes master planning, public buildings, healthcare clinics, sports facilities, redevelopment, offices, schools, and museums, he strives to design inclusive buildings that provide maximum benefit to all users. His innovative approach to sustainable architecture is highly acknowledged in Europe, North America, and all over the world, and his buildings have been honored by prestigious institutions and industry organizations alike. The project we will be talking about today is the Action Sports Center in München-Pasing. I did it. I said it right. In München-Pasing, Germany. To respond to the rising demand for spaces dedicated to self-organized extreme sports, the City of Munich launched the Action Sports Center, an inclusive venue designed hand-in-hand with future users. From the early planning stages, skaters, BMX riders, and other community members worked alongside the Department of Education and Sports to shape a space that truly reflects their needs. Now let's get into the details. Welcome back to Detailed. My guest today, I am very honored to have Mr. Stefan Behnisch, founder of Behnisch Architekten, with offices in Stuttgart, Boston, Munich, and Weimar. Hopefully I pronounced all of those correctly. The project we are talking about today, and I am particularly excited about this project, is the Action Sports Center and I even researched this one, München-Pasing. I'm batting 1,000 today, in Germany. Stefan, welcome to Detailed. You and I actually met and chatted for a bit way back in 2011 when you came to Portland, Oregon to be the keynote speaker at our Portland CSI Industry Forum, which you probably don't remember, but I do. How are you? How have you been?
Thank you. Very good. I'm fine. I do remember being in Portland and giving this talk at that time. I do remember it quite well. It was the time when we had won a competition for the business school at Portland, in Portland PSU. So I do remember it well. It was a good time. I enjoyed it always being in Portland.
Well, good. You know you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
The door is always open. So I always start off every interview with some kind of icebreaker question. I just pick something different for every guest. And so for you, I would like to know, with your storied career, of all of the notable projects that you have designed over the years, is there one project experience that stands out among the rest?
That's a very tough question because I couldn't say because when we do projects, we consider each and every project a new experience, an ongoing learning experience. And we always try to find this one tweak, this one element in each project which makes the character. And so they are hardly comparable. There is the Harvard project, the biggest project I ever did, the largest one. Great client, fantastic project. But there is also a small project, the kindergarten in Germany, very small, our first pure wood structure with a beautiful garden. So I couldn't say they all have their different challenges.
Very politically correct answer.
That was not meant to be. It's
No,
you,
I imagine it's hard to choose because
but
every
there,
project is different.
but there are always projects where you have the feeling, here we did it. We found the spirit of the project. In German, we would say the Wesen, die Gestalt of the project. What is the character? What does this project want to be? And sometimes you have the feeling we didn't go far enough. It's a nice project, but maybe we didn't do it fully justice. So it's not A and B, but there is something where you have the feeling we hit this sweet spot.
Well, I love something you just said, and I'm on, I don't know, like 140 episodes now that I have interviewed an architect since we started this podcast, and I think I've only heard 2 architects say to me, "What does this project want to be?" Or I need to listen to the building and not try to kind of cram the building into my vision, but feel the building and what it needs to be. And I think that's something that is sometimes missing in our profession, or it gets forgotten in that, it's you can take your vision and work with what that building needs to be, but when you try to shove a square peg into a round hole, you often will end up with something that wasn't what you really wanted in the end.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Sometimes we as a society, and that's Germans, Americans, I would say it's the whole industrialized world, let me put it that way. We started perceiving architecture as a commodity. Invest. We call it here in Germany concrete gold. So that doesn't do it justice. That is just investing or creating investment opportunities. And I never understood my profession, my task, my future, my life just doing that, serving that.
Well, that might explain some of the cranky architects out there. Not all of them. I love architects, but when I think I will say for all these architects that I've met doing this, there is a common thread among pretty much almost all of you in that I've had one architect after another tell me that they had a passion from a very young age, that they just knew they wanted to do this. And I think it's when they get lost and forget why they did it in the first place, and what drew them to this profession. This is not an easy profession. You have to be really passionate to really get the most out of this profession. I really truly believe that, which is evidenced by this project we're about to talk about. So I raised 4 kids, 3 of which are boys. And I have found, and they all had different interests and different things they like to do. I've found in the United States, at least, that the types of young athletes that would use a facility like the one we're about to talk about are not always held in the same regard as more traditional athletes like football players or basketball players, which translates to young people in the US not getting facilities like this one that you've designed. Let's start with, before we even tell them about this facility in detail, why did the Department of Education and Sports in Munich decide to do this project?
Okay. Maybe I first have to explain something, how we perceive here public facilities
Okay.
and perceive sports. Sports in your country is always perceived very competitive. It is a possibility to either be a star, or who doesn't want to be a star? But it is also a possibility to get into a university, in a good school. So it's almost often perceived as a tool. And also it is only appreciated if you are in the top tier of your sports. Here, sports is perceived as for children at least, but also for young people or even old ones, as a public good. It's perceived as part of education. It's perceived as enhancing living quality. And we pay taxes to enhance also our living quality. So, swimming pools are public funded. Soccer places are publicly funded. Sports clubs, Vereine, are a private initiative but publicly supported with public money. The same thing as our theaters and concert halls and operas are publicly funded. It is a different system. We do pay higher taxes, but we get a lot out of it. Yeah, it's not as good as Denmark, but it's okay here. So a city knows, Munich, let's go back to this project. The city of Munich knows the best way to get the kids off the dark areas of the street is giving them an area where they can play in a safer environment and where we can control not them, but the environment they are exposed to. That's a huge difference. So the city of Munich said, we have 60 soccer clubs. We have 20 public pools. But what is with the kids that do these kind of modern young sports? I call it that. It's not young anymore. The best skateboarders are in their mid-30s, but still, you know what I mean. These not so established mainstream sports. Let's build something for them. And it's interesting because they looked for a feature area, a building or place where they could place it, and found this old factory building, finished exactly 1900. Historic listed building. But the program asked for far more than than the building can house. And they said, okay, This is a historic building. Nobody can use it really, but let's restore it so we can keep it for the next generations. So it's sort of double dipping. You do a sports hall, but you also take care of one of your listed fantastic buildings. And then the second part is an extension to it. But since this is for not mainstream sports, it took a long time because whenever they needed to cut somewhere budget, it usually goes there. Do we have short time for a little excursion?
Sure.
Let me talk briefly about my youth here in Stuttgart because we had the same issue. We had an area newly developed with a big traffic crossover in the city of center. Stuttgart always perceived itself as a car town, a bit like LA, yeah? So, but in a valley, actually idiotic, doesn't work, but still. And so this elevated platform with buildings on it and bars was a disaster, a failure. And then the young people took it over. They had the drugs scene for a while, a little bit, sort of. San Francisco had these areas, but so anyway, and then they started using these tunnels for skateboarders because the tramway that went through stopped, didn't go through anymore, but the cars still went through. And the skaters were next to it in the tunnel. So it was called the gas chamber because they were skating next to the cars. And then the city noticed there is a need, there's a vacancy. And then they created another space for them. So Munich, similar. When they notice there is a need, the kids are somewhere skating, but it's unsafe for them and everybody else. Then the city notices we need to create a space. Same thing in Stuttgart as in Munich.
It's interesting because in the US we have the same situations. Kids are skateboarding on benches and concrete walls and all kinds of crazy places, and they don't want them doing that, but they fight tooth and nail not to build facilities like this because they say, well, then it's going to bring them all together and all we're going to have problems. And Portland is one of the places where they built one of the first kind of with city help skate parks.
Mhm.
And it's now been operational for a number of years, a lot of years, and they don't have a bunch of problems there because the kids have somewhere to go to do what they love, but the attitude is wrong here. I had kids that were snowboarders, and they're kind of part of that same mindset that people have about particular kids that do less average sports. And I ran their snowboard team for 5 years. And I had more fun with those 40 kids in
Oh
those
yeah.
5 years. And they never gave me an ounce of grief,
Now,
ever.
now it's also a stupid perception. It's sort of reversing act and reaction. It's always they always think, oh, the kids, they don't give a place for the kids. So the kids go somewhere where they don't get hassled. And that's usually the darkest corner of the city. And then all the bad stuff comes there because they are kids.
Right.
So it's sort of give them an opportunity, give them a safe place, let them run on benches, let them spray paint. Who cares? But give them a safe environment. That's all that counts.
And that's why I was really particularly excited to talk to you about this project when I saw your office sent me a few different projects to choose from, and I saw this one, and I was like, okay, there was another one, and I don't remember off the top of my head that I may need to have you back because it was really hard to choose, but I just love the whole heart behind this, and the whole having some common sense in building something to actually make things better, not worse.
Yeah, it
So
is. Mhm.
your project description talked about the inclusivity of this project. So explain that to me and tell me why that was a priority for the owner. What do you mean by that?
The inclusivity of the project. It's really inclusion, and that inclusion goes to that kids on wheelchairs could use the skate part. The, I mean, there's a yeah, natural border to it. I mean, they can do parkour, but they can do a lot of these sports in their own way. And it should be so inclusive that they can watch each other, they can include each other, and that at times the wheelchair kids can use it, at times others. It should be really for everybody. It should be for abled, disabled, of all cultures, the bikers, I mean bicycle, the skateboard, the parkour. And the funny thing is it's a little bit like the surfers. They are sort of tribes, different tribes. You know that.
Yeah.
Try to go surfing in Malibu if you're not part of the tribe. Yeah. It can end deadly. Yeah. So so and the idea is to create an environment that they all can coexist there. That's the inclusion part. Rich, poor, socially challenged, well educated, German, non German, male, female, wop, 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 all together. It should be the interesting thing is that the young people are often not yet spoiled, not yet rotten, not yet they can really accept each other without limits and prejudices. And that's a little bit getting difficult with the right wing movement also here because they are targeting the young. But at the time being, I would say things like that can enhance the tolerance and the living together.
And there's I think also a hope that when you can, because I agree with you, when you can get them young and put all kinds of people together and have them see that this is not scary and we are all just skin and bones living our lives. I've talked about this before, but I always told my kids when I was raising them that you were only allowed to judge another human being by one thing and one thing only. And that's basically, excuse my English, whether or not they're an asshole.
Yeah.
Otherwise, um, people come from all different walks of life and they all have something to offer you and to help you grow as a human. And if you can get them young and have them see that people are just people, and it's
Yeah.
okay that somebody walks a different path than you can still be the best of friends. You hope that as they get a little older and this world starts to try to influence them in less positive directions, that you hope that you've taught them enough that they don't walk down that path. At least that's my hope. And luckily my kids did not, but because I would go beat them. I'm kidding. I would think about it though. So you told me why this site and facility was selected. And you mentioned a 1900 building. So I have to know, because it's a lot of work to take something that old and make it something that you can use today. What did you have to work with on this site and in this building? What did you walk into that you were going to have to transform?
Dead pigeons.
Oh,
Um, Now, the thing is, actually, the basis was okay. We could keep most of the structure, the steel structure, the fine steel structure. It's almost Eiffel, yeah, fine steel structure. And but we had, for example, they had some cladding on the roofs. We had to change that to very light precast concrete sort of boards sitting on there. So we needed to strengthen it a little bit. What we had a very good structural engineer, you don't see the difference. He just added one bar, a small bar. So it's very well done. So it is a historic monument, a listed building. So whatever we did, we had to go through the department responsible for historic buildings. But they're okay. They're pretty good. You can work with them. For example, we took the old skylights out. They put new skylights in, and to avoid overheating, we did put photovoltaic in the skylights. So they create sort of a half shade, half light. They cover about 70% and 30% light comes still. That was calculated. How much should it be? So we worked even with very contemporary means to enhance and restore the historic building. And for example, we have a ventilation system in there, but it's a very passive building. There is no AC in anything. Only a ventilation system where we can blow fresh air in some of the roof. It is a very, the historic basis was solid and was good. And even if we would have built it from new, this part wouldn't have been that different because it's an industrial hall. And what is more suitable for this kind of sports than an industrial hall? So it's just a historic industrial hall, but still it's one.
this is just kind of occurred to me. Where exactly, like, is this a place that's easy for the kids to get to?
Oh yeah, it's very easy to get it. There is a new bicycle road. We have now in these bigger cities these bicycle expressways that go from suburb to city center, point to point. And it's right on one of these expressways. So the bicycle infrastructure is very good. The new subway line is under construction and will have a station very close by. The railway, the S-Bahn, what is it? The commuter train has a station very close by. So publicly, easily reachable. With private car, difficult, no parking.
There's a good way to make sure people use public transportation now, isn't it? This group's probably riding their skateboards there.
Oh, yeah.
So, I got some pre comments here. So let's talk specifically about this building. Why don't we start with a broad description of the Action Sports Center project? What all is, I looked at this and I was like, wow, what all is included in this project?
Okay. There is a first stage and a second stage of this project. The first stage is the historic hall with some containers next to it for restrooms, coffee shop, stuff like that, and some admin. And they can move to another place when stage 2 comes. In the first stage, we have mainly skateboard and some BMX and stuff like that. Yeah, that's mainly. And we have built in a terrace for people to watch it. That is built in. It's a big steel structure, a yellow steel structure, where people can hang out and watch and have some water or coffee or whatever it is. So the first step is relatively open. You can do a lot of these action sports, and it has some specialized areas like skateboard or BMX and so on. But it gets really interesting and bigger. I mean, this is about 15,000 square feet, roughly, cross floor area. But when the second stage comes, there we have a lot more. We have then BMX, skateboard together with the first stage, parkour, which is very complex to build, and yeah, whatever, rollerblades, whatever. Many different kinds of these sports in there. And then also a sort of a cafeteria will come as well in the second stage. Both stages are, and that was very important for the city, very sustainable, very low energy, very comfortable. The second stage is in wood. The first stage reused mostly existing areas and materials, and everything that is built in excess, like the containers, should be reusable.
So, starting with the building enclosure, what kinds of things did you have to do in your design, and what kind of work did you have to do on the enclosure? We're going to work our way from the outside in, and the framing to bring it up to current codes and standards.
First of all, it's not totally up to current codes. But since it's a listed building, they give you some slack there. We had to improve the structure as I described before, because we got more load on the roof. Yeah, that's one thing. Then we had to insulate the building, but we kept all the walls. And we also kept the framing of the historic windows at the front and back. And that was quite challenging to develop with companies an insulated window that actually fits in there, also from the weight and everything. So the frame of the building is historic, 1900s. Also the walls, all the supporting system, partly enhanced, but generally. But then we had to insulate it at the outside, and that were long discussions. What can we do? What should we do? And we agreed with them to insulate the roof and the side walls and the back wall, but not the front wall. No insulation at the front wall, because there is the historic wall with all the elements, and we wanted to keep that. So that is not insulated. Then we had a huge challenge with the acoustic, because the building is almost like a cupola, a tunnel. And we all know when you have rounded spaces, you get a big echo. It's getting very noisy. So we'd had to put sound buffers at the walls, for example. But there is not that much to this building, technically or physically material. But there is a lot of planning in there, of design and engineering. Great engineers worked with us on that. There's a lot of engineering, because it's always easy to build from scratch, to knock something down and build something there. It's far more difficult if you have something and want to bring it in a usable state, but use as minimal material and effort as possible. The design effort is far greater.
Well, you can say you didn't do much here, but we're about to talk about the inside of this building, and I would strongly disagree with you. So, this facility is meant to serve several different sports. I'll name a few: freestyle, skateboarding, street parkour, BMX, and dirt biking, chair skating, no idea what that is, mini ramp, also don't know what that is, and jump line. The last three, I've never heard of any of them, and I thought I was like pretty up to speed. How do you even begin planning? This is not the kind of project an architect plans every day. Like, where do you even start? They're a picky bunch, that group of athletes. They
Oh
they
yeah, yeah, I
want
know.
their
You
ramps and
start,
all of that
you
certain
start
ways.
talking to them. You talk to specialists, social workers who work with the kids. Then, for example, skateboarding is probably a pretty far developed kind of sports, a little bit like breakdance and so on. It's pretty far developed. And there are consultancy that design tracks. They design the balls. And we talked to them. In the end, we ended up designing our own ones with their help because they never could make up their mind. They were in endless discussions. So, but with their help, we designed them. You need to. I had younger people on the job also. Maria Hinsberger, who is a partner from me in Munich, but she is far younger and she was responsible before she became partner for this project. And they they watched, they visited venues, they talked to people to understand what this all is about. Because a lot of this stuff, I didn't know what it is. I still don't know. Yeah. But you first need to understand how they tick, what they do. And as I said before, it is here not competitive. You don't have to fulfill a norm. What you have to do is create a space where they really can play and work and do sports. And it's for them very serious. This is not a game. It's really serious. And but you need to learn that. But if you do a cancer research center, you need to learn what they do. Same thing.
Well, I think people forget sometimes, though, to they'll talk to the client and the owner and maybe some like users, but I worked in educational projects for years. And, it always bothered me. It's like, well, do you ever talk to the kids? They're the ones that are using this facility. And, obviously they're not going to design your building, but do you ever talk to them to get maybe an insight that you might not have had before? And in a facility like this, I don't know how you do it without talking to them.
Yeah. We need to talk to the kids, but when you do a school, you also need to talk to the teachers because they spend their life there. The kids a few years, the teachers have to be there. But here, same thing. You talk to kids, to the social workers. You talk to the different people. And what I said before. You have with each project, you have to learn what this is about. And here it's extreme because it's not our daily business. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of extreme. Pools, I know how to build. Schools, I know how to build. But this one, that was a challenge, but fun.
So I'm going to test you a little bit here. Did you go out and get on a skateboard?
Oh, I used to skate.
Oh,
I
okay.
used to skate. First of all, I lived for a while in Venice, California.
You have to skate if you live in
You
Venice.
have, back in the 80s, the beach was a bit dangerous, yeah. But I did skate as a kid. And then, young man also. At one point, when I had kids, I stopped it. And then my kids started it, yeah. So I'm familiar with that. I bike, so I'm familiar with that. But parkour, I'm too old and too heavy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I've watched parkour,
Oh,
and
scary.
it's terrifying. It's really cool to watch. You just like you feel like you're watching human
It's artistic.
Spider-Man everywhere. They're just
Yeah,
how do you
it's
do that? But
amazing. And I am always highly impressed what they are able to do and how brave they are. I mean, it would scare the hell out of me.
yeah, I think I'd rather jump out of an airplane.
Yeah.
What did the I mean, I know that you said you had some consultants that you consulted with, but what did the learning curve look like to design even being a person who skated when you were younger? That doesn't mean you know all the ins and outs of all these different
Wow.
parts. I mean, was
Oh,
the
I
learning
was
curve
a street
difficult?
I was a street skater. They're totally different discipline. Um, steep learning curve, and very interesting. In the beginning, you think you know what it's about, and you talk to them, and you think, "Yeah, I know. Okay, let's go on with it." And then here, especially, I noticed the further I went, since to be honest, most of my knowledge, except bike and skating, is from movies, parkour and this stuff. It's most of my knowledge in these extreme sports. And then I noticed, and it took me half a year to notice that we are rather clueless. That we thought we know it, but that it's far more complex. And the process was far more complex. I mean, to get these people to agree on something. And the client was okay, the city, but they sort of took the back seat and watched us. And the only thing they raised their hand was sort of when we said, we need that and that and that. How much is it? And we said, oh, that's an extra 100,000. So I would say, yeah, okay. I have to say something about the city of Munich, which is very unusual, also in Germany and in US, totally unheard of. When you design a project for the city of Munich municipality, project like that or a school, costs in the beginning is you do a calculation, you ask for a budget, they add 20% to it. And then they say, unless the program changes, don't come back. And then if the program changes, you have a good excuse, not a problem. It's very clever because they all deliver their projects 10% below budget. So they are all heroes. And politicians are anyway totally clueless because what do they know what it costs to build a building? They only compare it to the numbers they know. But the problem we architects always create is we don't deliver true costs. We always cheat to get it through. If we would get them used to a higher benchmark, we would have the same issue. It wouldn't be a problem. So Munich, because they know of this problem and they know architects are wimps, they, they always add 20% to the budget and tell us, don't come back without a good excuse. So here, same thing, learning curve for us, but covered in the budget.
That's an amazing way to approach it, because I agree with you as far as architects, and I know that they're trying to get the job, and there's fear they won't get the job. But I think that getting into that habit over the years has really hurt the profession and hurt architects in a lot of ways. You
And
also
the
don't,
quality.
yeah, in the fees that you get, wouldn't it be amazing if we could just say, hey, here's really what it's going to be? It's just the way it is, because then you find ways to get there anyway. And oftentimes that'll be a contentious
Yeah.
process, same with
Yeah, and
contractors.
everybody is upset.
Yeah. It'd be nice if we could change that. So in the reading and homework I was doing, it looks like there was some heavy construction to create the sporting field of this space. Tell me in more detail what you designed on the first level and some of the materials you used. What did you have to do to make this field happen?
This skateboard, it is in the beginning, we planned to do it out of plywood. You can do it out of plywood. You can form it, but then it turned out to be not durable enough. So it is mostly forms, the form. So you get the right form, wooden elements, I don't know the English word, and plaster, concrete, rebar. It is a very mixed and very craftsy construction. A lot of handwork to do that, because it has to be exactly, if you do too much of a edge, the skateboards don't stay clear of it. So everything is very calculated and constructed with forms. So it's ideal for the skateboarders. And that was, since it's 3-dimensional and you can't use brick or something like that. I mean, it's all craftsmanship. It is a lot of different materials, very complex, also hollow spaces below it. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, because it's nothing like I had done it before.
I can't wait to get to the questions about construction so we can talk about what your contractors did with this design, but we're not there yet. So you did mention that there is what did you call it? Terrace or balcony, or an upper level that you can watch the sports with. Is there
Yeah.
any other seating for spectators or for the athletes?
Oh yeah, there is seating along the walls with, some cabinets and seating benches. And then on the this mezzanine gallery that spans clear over the width of the hall, there's also some areas to stand and watch. No seating, but to stand and watch. But the main seating for the kids and for spectators are along the side walls, where you can watch.
Well, and one of the things, the listeners can go look at the pictures, but one of the reasons I asked you that question is I love the way that you had the insets in the walls for that seating. So many places, even gymnasiums and things like that will just have benches against a flat wall. And it almost gets in the way sometimes of the sporting field. And I love the way that you set that back a little bit from the
Yeah,
actual space of the field, and worked in a little storage there as well.
yeah,
I thought that
yeah.
was
It's
pretty
helped.
genius.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of a niche.
Right.
It's but that is sort of also was a little bit dedicated by the structure because the structure gave us some depth and we were able to create these niches with the seating, but also storage rooms, storage space, some storage room, storage space. You can't do too much of that because of fire regulations, non-combustible materials and so on. But this creates a rather personal and almost homey atmosphere. So it's not really spectator seating, it's more for the kids, for the athletes, for the break. So they can stuff their stuff, store their stuff. But then there are also the cones, for to create a course and stuff like that.
So I spent about a 6.5 year stint in my career writing specs for an MEP firm. And I'm always interested when you're going into a building that's this old, how you how you update the mechanical, electrical, and the plumbing. You mentioned the photovoltaics on the skylights, but what did you have to do for this building so that you had all the facilities in that arena that you needed?
We had there, I mean, it's obviously all new electric and MEP, everything. The first architectural decision was to keep it exposed. Don't even try to hide it. We had the big advantage that the building is connected to the district heating system. And Munich's district heating is supposed to be 80% geothermal in something like 10, 15 years. It's already up there 30%. So it's a very low emission heating system. So this is good. This helped us, yeah, a lot. And then we have exposed the ventilation pipes we need. I mean, we needed the ventilation pipes for different things. Mainly first, but that could be done purely natural. And it's done mostly natural by opening roof and front windows to keep the air fresh, to keep the air in. But then we need a ventilation system for winter and especially to um, smoke extract if there's a fire in there also to really blow out. Yeah. And this is pretty in your face system. It's tubes, yellow, hanging in there. No hiding, no integration, nothing. They are part of this old factory structure. That was the system. It's not very complex, but it does a lot of the necessary things. Ideally, in summer, let's say in the time between March and October, you can run it pure natural ventilation.
So you mentioned it earlier that there's going to be a second phase to this project. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about that for a minute. So I understand the second phase is going to be a timber hybrid design, to expand the facility with the parkour area, skate bowl, dirt bike jump line, and a cafe with a lounge and terrace. Is there a bar for me? I'm just kidding. Did you have to make any special considerations for this project now, the project you have right now, to be able to accommodate phase 2 when it comes?
We have done for both projects a DD already. So phase 2 is designed already, part of the design. And it was decided originally they wanted to build them together, but then we had one of our 100 financial crisis, yeah. And um uh, well, then let's not go there. But then they decided to first do one, and now they've decided to do phase 2. It's gonna come in 2-3 years. So the containers, so we added these containers that house the cafeteria, the toilets, and so on, and some office space and changing facilities. We added to the first phase, but in containers that will, when phase 2 comes, phase 2 will be directly connected to the hall where now the containers are, and they will be moved to a different place and become part of phase 2. So nothing goes to waste. Everything will be usable, and part of the infrastructure of phase 2 is already laid out there and built there. So we have done a garden now and planting, but we have done it in a way that the trees, if it happens within the next 5-6 years, the trees can be moved to another place. Yeah. So the idea is not to destroy anything we have done and built to build phase 2. So it's fully integrated already.
So those containers, when you move them for phase 2, will they remain being used for what they're being used for right now?
Yeah.
And you're just going to move them around to make it all.
Yeah. They go to a different place, and they will partly be extended, for example, changing facilities and so on. So, but some elements like the cafeteria, which is right now a rather lame thing in one of the containers, will then move fully in phase 2. And phase 2 so far is a wooden sphere, I would say, partly cladded with glass, photovoltaics, and so on. It's almost a little bit like one of these, how are they called? In California, they did them a lot, these domes, these buildings. There was a special term for that. Something dome, doesn't matter. A little bit Buckminster Fuller kind of thing. And this will be the skin of the building, and there will be a sort of a freestanding concrete table, 3 stories in there. If we build it in 1-2 years, maybe the concrete table will become a steel table or wooden table, because we tried now to avoid concrete as much as possible.
And why are you trying to avoid concrete? Just for carbon footprint? Yeah.
CO2 footprint.
Okay.
Concrete is pretty bad.
You check a lot of boxes with this project: community, inclusion, sustainability, heritage conservation, and contemporary action sports, which I know kids that would kill for a space like this. All in one place. What are you most proud of with this project?
I would say I'm very proud of how we dealt with the historic building. I think the people who worked on it in my office, especially Maria Hunsberger, were very attentive to the needs of the kids, young people. And I would say, if it's finished, to go full circle, I think this building will be what it wants to be. It will really, it is a mix. I mean, let's talk for a second pure architecture, with a very big A. It is not. It's almost a mess because there's the historic hall, the containers, the new extension. It's a very multifaceted architecture that is very functional, but it's very fitting because it has a very multifunctional purpose. Many different sports, creating a home for the kids, for youth, doing education, being a social hub. And I don't think that could be done with a big A museum or something like that. I think it needs to be playful.
So I don't know, maybe I'm an outlier here, but for me, that big A isn't the fancy museum. I'm not saying that couldn't be included, but that big A is when you fully create that thing that your client needs or that building needs to be, to the point that those people walking into that space feel it the way they're supposed to feel it. And when you've done that, you're a success. You can create a big gorgeous hotel or skyscraper or whatever the big A kind of projects are, but if it doesn't meet the true need that you were tasked with in the first place, then and I've been in buildings that are supposed to be amazing that I've thought, this is the stupidest thing I've ever been in. Somebody worked way too hard to
Yeah,
make a statement that they forgot that then now I'm going to walk in there and want it to serve whatever purpose it's supposed to serve.
agreed, agreed, agree. I totally agree. That's also my understanding of architecture. But most people perceive a big A as a formal statement, architectural formal statement. And this is not. This is, as I said, almost a mess, but it is designed that way, purposely designed. It didn't happen. It's purposely designed that way because we spoke about inclusion in the beginning. It should not alienate. It should be home for everybody. It should not be formal. It should not intimidate. It should be almost like, I always said, ideally, we just would put a circus tent there. That would be the ideal solution. Not possible because of weather and durability and so on, but that's kind of the atmosphere we wanted. And I think they succeeded in doing that. I mean, I haven't done it. It's my office, but the people who have worked on it, Maria and her crew, they did a superb job there.
Well, and I, again, having raised 4 kids and some were involved in skateboarding and dirt bike riding and all of those kinds of things, I don't think the particular crew of athletes that you're going to have at this facility want that fancy. I mean, this is a sport that started in the streets and has definitely elevated, but I think it demanded a more gritty and, having those utilities exposed and letting it continue to be what the purity of what the sport started as.
Have
I don't know that it would have gone over in a big A kind of format, in the traditional form
No,
of the word.
no. It wouldn't have been appropriate. I'm absolutely sure it wouldn't have been appropriate. But see, that's the advantage. If you work for the public, they don't have to sell it to anybody. If you work for an investor, he even would, or they would, he, she, they would even try to make this a statement because it looks better on the rendering and in the brochure. It sells better.
Right.
Yeah. That's the a little bit the challenge of the PPP project, public-private partnership projects, that there is always a different agenda. And here, when you work for the public, where you deal with people who personally cannot gain and lose, you can really cut to the bone of things.
So I can't believe I forgot to put this question on my list. So forgive me that you're not forewarned of this one. Construction. I mean, there's always a good construction story, especially when you're doing an adaptive reuse project. But now you're adding, and I say this jokingly, insult to injury by also doing the kind of facility that almost nobody's ever built before. What did the construction phase look like? This old building, and you have a contractor approaching construction they don't do every day. How did that phase go?
Well, we have a little bit a different system here. We hardly work with general contractors. We don't know construction management. We work with the individual trades, and we as architects manage the trades on site.
Wow. Oh, wow. I did not know that.
We work in a so-called multi-stage contracting. A project like that, we do, and we also do our own tender documents. We don't have spec writers. We don't have hardware consultants. It's a very different tradition here in this case. But because I know both US and Germany, I know that. I would say on a project like that, in average, we manage about 40 different contracts. Yeah, the bricklayer is a different one from the street people, from the drywallers, from the electricians, from the MEP, from the water people, whatever it is. So often, sometimes we have this sort of combined contracting. That means we have 4 to 8 different contracts on site. This is sort of all mechanics is one contract, so including electricity. Building skin is one contract, or concrete is one, earth is one, and so on. Drywall, and so on. Interior is one. But on these projects, especially these fine little projects, we plan everything. We tender everything separate. And we need at least 3 offers before we can hire them. And then we manage them on site and do site supervision. Or sometimes we hire an architect who is specialized on doing that. It's very different from US. But therefore, we also control the costs from the beginning to the end. There is nobody involved, cost consultant or anything. That's all our job. So it's very different how we go about that. On a bigger project, like, I don't know, not a be also, we have something like 250 different contracts to manage on site. Sometimes same company having 2 or 3 contracts, but still. Yeah, you know how many trades a building has, and usually each trade is a different contract. So it is work. We get paid for it. It is extra work. but you have a lot of quality control. And you can make sure the facade doesn't go on before the concrete is dry and finished and doesn't mess up your facade. So that's how it works. And actually, it is fun.
I'm listening to you, and as a spec writer and somebody who's written contracts for years and done all kinds of projects, and I'm sitting, number one, spec writers are pretty cool. I'm just saying, if you ever decide in Germany you need spec writers, you'd probably be happy. But I'm thinking about this, and so I'm going right down a rabbit hole in another question you're not expecting, because that's obviously that's not just kind of different from how we do it in the US. That is drastically different from how we do it in the US. What did you think the first time you did a project in the US when you realized that you wouldn't be involved in all of that? Because you must understand construction itself far better than most architects, or at least most architects from the US, because they do the typical CA stuff, but they're not involved like that.
Interesting. When I came to US, my first client was Lime Properties, a developer, but cool people. Very good client. And I had the biggest problem for me, I understood it because I had worked in LA as an intern for a year in the former Craig Elwood office. And with Steve Woolley, small office, great time. I understood the American system a little bit. So when we got this project in Cambridge, the Gensheim headquarters was my first US project. I had a client who actually appreciated our knowledge in the overall trade. He had heard about it and he liked it. It was still a construction management job, but he took advantage of our experience in taking apart cost calculations, in knowing how see, when you do spec writing, when you know how to do spec writing, it all fits together with the construction documents. You know which layer comes after what layer and what has to come first and where the problems are. The roof, the foil, facade, how does it go together? Yeah. And usually if you have a general contractor, they do the roof and then someone does the facade and then they stand in front of it and say, okay, how can we tidy that one up? Yeah. And the concrete is still running down the facade and ruining the windows. Yeah. So we had a client who appreciated that. But my challenge was to teach my German architects who worked on these projects, on also Portland and so, where to stay out and not being wise asses and not telling people. I always told them, listen, they can build buildings. They can build great buildings. Look at Frank Lloyd Wright. His detailing was so la, but he was a great architect. And also contemporary architecture. They have great architects and they know how to build building in that country. Maybe we can bring something to it. But we are not missionaries. It's not our job. We are here to learn. And that was sometimes a little bit difficult to tell our people, to learn, to adapt, but not to forget what they know and can bring. So it's a fine line. But for me, it was beautiful to be able to work in both countries.
Which one would you prefer?
It's hard to say right now. No, the, I would say I am German. I have to say I'm German. What really drove me sometimes nuts was the sloppiness on US construction sites. That because I'm coming from a country where there's apprenticeship, a trade is learned, and you do a test, then you are Geselle, then you learn another 3 years, then you are master. Bricklayer, concrete people, they are in trade school. And they are not just picked up on the street corner. So I had sometimes problems on American construction sites to explain to the people. Very simple. Gensai drove me nuts. Electricians, all switches were somehow crooked. And I said, listen, guys, it's easy. And I bought these little levels, I bought 20 of these little levels and white cotton gloves and said, because the walls were already painted. And I said, it's very easy. Take that, make sure it's level. And if you do it the first time around, you don't have to go back. They didn't get that. They were insulted. They said, we'll do it later. And I said, no, I know the game. You're not doing it later. The client will take our $10,000 out of the bill and everybody thinks it's a great deal. And I suffer because they are all crooked. So where do I like work? I like Americans. I like American construction sites. Steel workers are heroes. They look great there, But I'm German. I have to say, I like the precision of the construction business here.
Well, Germans are just known just a little bit for their efficiency and their attention to detail.
I'm not even sure if efficiency is the right word. Maybe the precision and a little bit over precise sometimes and a bit nagging. Efficiency we might have been, but we are not really very efficient anymore.
Well, I won't argue with you because I tend to get over precise sometimes and I drive people crazy, but I'm a real fan of getting it right the first time. So I don't think
Yeah,
there's anything wrong with that. And I think that's worth being proud of.
yeah.
What
Mm.
would you say your biggest lesson learned was from this project that will make you a better architect on the next project?
Okay. One lesson there definitely was the complexity of different challenges on a relatively small project. And that's technically, architecturally, and working for this kind of complex, multifaceted use. Oh, it's funny. When you go in interviews for a new job and you take your lab consultant with you because everybody thinks building a lab building is so complex, they make it this magic science. Harmless. Building a thing like that is complex, far more complex, because you don't deal with tubes, with steel, with gases, with refrigerators, with autoclave. You deal with a bunch of kids that have all their opinion.
I definitely can see how that could be more complicated. Before we get to the two closing questions, I always have two questions I close out the podcast with. But before we get to that, tell me what Behnisch Architekten is working on now that I get to call you about to come back and talk to me about in the future?
Oh, we work right now. We are now in the funny situation that some of my early buildings become historic buildings.
Oh,
That's when you get old. And
I'm not owning getting old. I'm sorry. It's just not, I'm just not going to do it.
okay, good decision. And we are redoing some repurposing. Some the clients come back to us and say we have different tenants or different use. We want to sell the building or want to rent it out. We don't need it anymore. And then they come to us and ask us to do the changes. Same thing for some of my father's buildings. So we have some of those. Then we have some public pools, quite a few schools, some residential, lab buildings, research, a pathology building. That's funny. That's strange. There you learn a lot. They, the poor architects who work on it, whenever they went to learn more about that, they came very pale back to the office. Then with other research buildings, I mean, it's a sports facilities. We do a very nice university sort of meeting hub, small in Switzerland, a test building for. It's a changing facility for sports facilities. Nothing special, but it's a test for simple, cheap, and very sustainable construction. Fast, simple, cheap, very sustainable. We do a research building in Switzerland for sustainable research. It's a building where the scientists can then that work in the building then can change the facade and have to test different things. So that's kind of stuff, interesting stuff.
What does it feel like going back to a building that you originally designed? What's it like, years later, walking into a building you originally designed and now you're going to adapt it or renovate it or whatever you're going to do? Do you look around and go, "Why did I do that?" Or you look at it, that's fine, but now what I've learned over my career, I would do it differently. What's that? That's got to be a little bit of a weird experience.
It is. It is and it isn't. It's kind of so far I was lucky. The buildings were maintained very, very well. And for example, there's the bank building in Stuttgart was bought by one of these hedge funds or whatever. And they rented out to the city. And in the beginning, the city wanted everything new inside. And then we went in there. Building it's more than 30 years old. The walls are in mint condition. Everything is in absolute mint condition. And technically, it had already radiant cooling, radiant heating. And it was very, very advanced technically. And so client decided, and the tenants also, we just and we try to convince them for sustainability reasons, they keep 90% of the walls. We were able to convince them to reorganize the program in a way that it fits in the building. It's a municipality, the city of Stuttgart. What feeling is it? It's there were some features in the building I never liked very much, where I think we didn't go far enough. we were too appeasing. And now I can fix these.
Oh, I love that. It's a new day and age. I'm going to get it now.
Yeah.
So, we always close the episode with two questions, starting with a broader industry question or just a broader question overall. Your bio says that you have a goal to, quote, connect the forces of human life and the natural environment, close quotes. And that fuels the design of every commission your firm receives. I applaud that. I really do. Why has that been so important for you personally, and why should it be important to everybody?
Well, it goes a little bit back to my education, I have to say. I come from a very liberal family. My father was a very well-known architect in Germany. And after I had finished school, I didn't know what to do. Everybody expected me to become an architect. There was a very good reason not to do it. And so I studied philosophy with the Jesuits. I'm not Catholic, by the way. But I studied with them because they teach philosophy as the mother of all sciences. And there I learned that whatever we do, whatever we start, there's always action and reaction. We always influence. So since it's the same amount of effort to build a stupid building, you might as well build a good building. And I always, and I'm still of the opinion, you need to do what you're convinced about. And we had that in discussion in the office often and a long time. What are we willing to do? What are we willing for whom to do? Who do we want to work with? And what should be the outcome of our work? And that's where the statement is.
Well, I also come from a very liberal background and live in a very liberal state, so you probably won't be surprised by my final question, just from our chatting already. So I like to believe that most of us, I wish all of us, want to live a life that leaves some kind of contribution to make the world a better place. So, for you, personal or professional, what do you hope your impact will be?
Hmm. Personal, that that my wife and I managed to give our offspring a possibility to develop a good life for themselves and give them the convictions we share, teach them the conviction professionally. Huh. What is important? See, I've I've done many buildings. I don't think they are really the legacy. They're fine, and it's fun to go somewhere and see old buildings. That's a vanity thing. I think the impact is that the young coming architects who worked with me, we educated in our office, understand that, for example, to work for a more sustainable and built environment, it's a learning process we'll never achieve. We'll never really, well, the stone of wisdom, the holy grail doesn't exist. Everything is in process. Everything is fluid. And we need to understand that our goal is actually to make it better, but to be open to acknowledge that each and every time we get a new task, the whole set will be new defined. The state of the art is newly defined. The situation, the program, the political context, the climatic context, geographical context, and so on, social context is always new defined. And it's an ongoing learning process. And if they get that and live the professional life that way, that's fine.
I think we were related in another life.
Mhm.
Stefan, this conversation has been an absolute delight. I can't even tell you how much I thank you for taking time. I happen to know that we started this interview at noon my time, which is
Mhm.
9 p.m. your time. And so for
Mhm.
you to take time out of your evening away from work to talk to me, especially that late, I really appreciate that. And I cannot wait to put this episode out there so everybody else can hear it.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much. It was a good conversation, good questions, good thoughts. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it. And it's 10:30. It's not too
It's
bad.
not too bad. Well, please know that you now have a standing invitation. You don't have to wait for one from me. If you're working on something you think would be a fun, interesting conversation, all you have to do is drop me a note, and you are welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it and I'll keep it in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.